Hello, Gabrielinos. It's Gene Harris, the police chief for the city of San Gabriel. I want to welcome you to our first virtual 411 with the chief. This 411 is a little bit different in that, well, let's take that back. It is a lot different than what we're used to, where we get to sit in the same room and answer any questions that you might have so that I could keep you up to date on what's going on with the police department. We've also included our public works folks, and so that's also been a little different for this particular presentation, but we're trying to find a way to continue to get information out to you. So again, this is 411 with the chief, and this is your opportunity to ask questions. There are no scripted points by me, no speeches. It's simply my intention to let this be your time so that I can answer questions you have. In this particular case, we've had to have the questions pre-submitted, and we will have those questions read out, and then I will answer the questions to make sure that we are addressing people's concerns. And if there are follow-up questions once 411 is over, you'll feel free to email us, and then I will follow up with you personally on any additional questions. So with that, let's get started. Well, first we have to explain what a CCW is. A CCW is a carrying of a concealed weapons permit. It allows people to carry concealed firearms if they are authorized. I don't have a particular personal policy other than to follow the penal code that allows me to either permit or deny a CCW for residents and businesses within the city. And I have chosen not to advocate that responsibility to the Sheriff's Department, which is within my right. I choose to make those decisions and make sure that we keep it local. And so that is the way that I view it. You can fill out the proper DOJ paperwork making the request. I'll thoroughly review that request, and then I'll make a decision and let the person know whether I've approved it or denied it. And I'll always give a specific reason why, and always meet with anyone if they have concerns or questions about my decision. We actually do have a mutual aid task force that we use with the working together with our fire department and some outside arson groups. We try to get together prior to the 4th of July to ensure that we are doing a couple of things. One, we try to educate the public about illegal fireworks and certainly the illegal discharge of firearms. So that's the education piece. We do a significant education campaign to make sure people understand what they should and should not be doing with regard to illegal fireworks and safe and sane fireworks. We also educate people as to what the repercussions are if they are caught performing any of those illegal activities. So the education piece is important. There's also really an enforcement piece to this, and that is that we want to go out and make sure that we address anybody who might be employing dangerous firearms or fireworks. And so to do that, we bring on extra staff during that time, well, specifically designed to go out and address these issues. Unfortunately, this year was an anomaly in that typically people are at fireworks shows or maybe at beaches or other places where legal fireworks shows are happening, and that puts people, away from home and away from the mundane nature of being locked away because of COVID. They're out doing other things. They're either at bars, they're at other venues where they can enjoy their 4th of July. This was a unique year in that everyone had been locked in their homes for quite a while and were now feeling the need to express themselves, and not always in a good way. So for the majority of the people in San Gabriel, it was a very healthy outlet with regard to just being at home and being with family and those kind of situations. But for some, they took advantage of it, not just in San Gabriel, but LA County-wide, in using illegal fireworks. I don't think we'll see the same intensity in years to come, provided we're not still locked down from COVID. But we try to address these things, and it's just a difficult measure to take, in that whenever we respond, we usually get there after the fact, and most of these are issues that we have to witness in order to take action. We responded to just over 65 calls for service that night from the police department, and our arson task force on the evening of the 4th responded to 4 incidents. No citations were written, however, we were heavily visible and out there trying to police the community. We've got to do a better job here at the police department, maybe of getting ahead of these things technologically, maybe find a technological solution to being able to identify where the fireworks and gunshots are happening, and you have my commitment that I'll try to do that. Well, specifically, the Ring doorbell is a tool that we do use, and we do promote its use along with other type of technologies for our residents. We are heavily involved in Nextdoor, which is an application online that connects community members so that they can discuss criminal occurrences and other types of events in their communities. And we are heavily engaged in that and communicating with the folks in our community. There is a program that has been put together to purchase some of this equipment on behalf of the residents. And so the plan was to have Ring pay a third, have the city pay a third, and have the resident pay a third for some basic equipment so that we can equip people with this particular technology. Unfortunately, that process began 2 years ago, and we ran into some financial difficulties which kind of lowered that on our priority list. It has not been forgotten. As we move through our budgetary seasons, we're going to try and put that back to work so that we can utilize the technology. But in the short term, we've really used things like Nextdoor, Twitter, and some of the other social media out there to stay in tune with our community with regard to criminal occurrences. And we're going to continue to kind of hone those skills and hone those resources so that we can use them in the fight against crime. Well, I'm glad to say that violent crime is down. We haven't been having the violent types of occurrences for a myriad of reasons. I like to think that it is because of the community outreach and the fact that we engage members of our community and the community engagement so that we are all eyes in the protection of our citizens and residents. The property crime, however, has kind of gone up a little bit. It fluctuates, but it tends to go up. And the most recent increases have to do with some legislation that's come down that we just have to deal with. Prop 47, AB 109, that came out in 2015 and 2016. We're starting to feel the effects of that, where we are realigning, changing some felonies to misdemeanors, and also realigning it to let people that have still a little bit of time left on maybe a sentence are being released back into the population. Those are legislative changes that we don't have any control over. So when those folks hit, let's say AB 109, for instance, when those folks come back out to our city and the surrounding areas, they're coming out with no real skills, no rehabilitative skills, and no real opportunities. And so a good portion of those people go back to what they know, and that's crime. So hopefully we're going to be able to get some things in place to kind of combat that. I'm currently sitting on a group called Alternatives to Incarceration to try and solve some of these problems before people go to jail and get them on the right track. We have a program here called From Joints to Jobs, where we run into and encounter folks in the field that we believe, albeit for them not having a job or some type of work that keeps them engaged, they wouldn't be involved in some of this behavior. And so we want to get those people in touch with the resources that they can use to get those jobs and then not have to engage in that other behavior. We work with some private companies to get these folks opportunities from people who can see that there is a need, and then we get these people working. And we feel that if that kicks off in earnest, we'll start to see a reduction. But there are a lot of reasons for the uptick in crime, and we've started addressing it with different resources, task forces, etc. I'm not sure what that question means with regard to retention, but I think we might be talking about the retention of our employees. This is a very good place to work. The atmosphere here, the camaraderie here is great. We are making this, by all accounts, a great place to be and interact with the employees here and the members of the community from all city disciplines, public works, fire, etc. And so we retain fairly well. One problem we have is that we are at the lower end of the spectrum with regard to pay and benefits. That's just a fact. And so we have to find other ways to keep our employees here. But those things, again, are cyclical. At some point, we won't be in this position financially, and we'll be able to offer more at some point. There are a lot of times where people look for greener grass, and we hope that we've given them a solid start in their police, law enforcement career, and that they can take those and take their talents elsewhere and be representative of what San Gabriel does. But we also want to create a situation where we have people wanting to come work here and be a part of what it is we're trying to build. So it's a constant balancing act, but I think so far we're doing pretty well. The police department is fully funded. The city is fully funded with the things that we need to do to take care of the city business. For this next fiscal year, we will be encompassing some new techniques and tactics to make sure we're better spending those dollars to address some of the social needs within the community. But we have not been adversely impacted by any changes in funding. That is not to say that the defund the police movement and some of the other issues that we're dealing with since the case of George Floyd may not have an impact somewhere down the road, but we have some smart people working to put all of the best thoughts and ideas together so that we can come up with a way to spend that money and provide the best police services possible. I'm not sure it's really changed the job of the police department. It may change sometimes the way we have to interact. So for instance, when we are on a full lockdown as put forth by the CDC or the state or other county officials, that requires us to handle certain crimes in certain ways. So when the DMV is closed, we decided that we weren't going to enforce specific DMV things that would require a person to go to the DMV. That just didn't make any sense to us. So unless it was something egregious, we tended to stay away from it and maybe give warnings instead of actually writing citations or arresting people for those types of violations. We tried to minimize the number of contacts so that we did not contribute to the spread of COVID. So that's something that was a change in the operational status. But it hasn't changed the way that we conduct our business per se. We are still going to be out here enforcing laws and preventing crime and ensuring that people who violate crime are dealt with swiftly. And I don't see that there's going to be a major change with that part of what it is that we're doing. Well, because we are in this virtual realm right now, I've already spoken to our school and community engagement team and our community engagement bureau. And in August, our video that's on the website that we usually put out every month to provide information for you, that will be an introduction to all 4 of our district lieutenants and our traffic bureau sergeant. Though all 5 of those individuals will introduce themselves to the community, and it'll be up for 1 month for people to get to know their representatives. As far as how often does it change, it depends on scheduling changes and team changes as they move. Sometimes it happens within a few months of each other. Other times it could take years. So it varies, anything from a couple of months to a few years. We are not having a significant homeless issue here in the city of San Gabriel based on our last homeless count. And what we don't have is we don't have the magnets that draw homeless into the community. Typically it's the places around us, that bus stations and things like that, which actually draw them to those particular locations. What we've also done is we've taken active steps to interact with homeless to get them resources through the homeless outreach program. We have a homeless outreach team that goes out and interacts with these folks in a way that validates that we don't pursue homelessness as a crime, but more of a plight that's in need of social services and help for these folks. So we get them to the resources that they need, and I think it's been immensely successful in San Gabriel. We already do that. We try not to get too far away from our cars in the context of needing to be able to respond to calls for service. But one of the prerequisites for this department is that we are community engaged, that we're out here meeting folks and making sure that we're talking to people through Business Watch, through Community Watch, you name it. We're out there trying to make sure we're interacting with folks. We bought some new tools, T3 motion vehicles. They are a 3-wheeled chariot style vehicle that allows us to be a little bit more up close and personal with the members of this community. That's also a program that's been successful. And we have revamped our bike program to include up to 8 personnel who are bicycle trained, who come out and really get up close and personal with members of this community. Every angle of our police service is designed to provide the connectivity with the community. So I believe we're already doing that in a great way. Well, actually, we address that on a regular basis. You might be able to discern that sometimes these problems are intermittent. The intermittent nature of how it is when we go and enforce it and we address it, it tends to slow down and that problem moves elsewhere. And then as soon as we leave to go promote another problem or deal with another problem, it comes back. And so that's the cyclical nature of traffic enforcement and the things that we need to do. So we look at this thing in 3 ways. We call it the 3 E's, right? So there's in education, we want to make sure that we're constantly letting people know not to speed through here, that it's a danger zone because of kids, etc. Number 2 is the engineering piece, and that is making sure that everything is engineered in a way that can help us stop some of this negative behavior. And I work closely with the Public Works Director, Greg DeVink, in trying to get that done. And he has been an excellent, welcome addition to our executive team. And his shop is cooking on all cylinders to get things done. Very proud of him and his crew. And then there's the enforcement piece, which is where we get out and we write citations, or we get out there and make traffic stops to try and impact that problem and mitigate some of the safety issues. And so all three of those things are things that are constantly in play. Unfortunately for us, we have a big city and we have 3 traffic officers, and that's what we use to enforce all of the issues in this town. And so we have to move from location to location. And I don't mean for this to sound like an excuse. It's simply an explanation of what resources have to do from time to time. But it is my responsibility to go up and address that, and my commitment is that I will make sure that I do that. The other part of it that's important is when we see these things happening, we need to get calls as soon as possible. And that is what our Neighborhood Watch and our Next Door program and some of the other things that we're using are very, very important, so that we can go after some of these folks after the fact. So I will stay committed in trying to solve that problem. You have my word. Well, I find it odd that we would need to have an African American or a woman or any other type of demographic specifically designed to deal with culture and chaos. That seems to me to be kind of a strange combination. But I will say, being a black American myself, that I think that we need to be doing more coming together and not the separation that seems to be in place amongst many different disciplines within government. I think that we need to come together as a community without any regard to race. I don't think race is the determining factor. I think that what is the determining factor is the quality of life we want to provide for the residents of San Gabriel. And it makes no difference to me if you're black, white, any other ethnicity. We are here to all be Gabrielinos and create a quality of life in this city that is inviting, that is open to business, that is a deterrent to crime, and making sure that the people who put their head down at night under the blanket of protection we provide are safe and can wake up every morning to a solid sunshine quality of life. So I tend to try and stay away from all of the naysayers or even the people who want to make this about race. And let's say, in my opinion, that we make it about community grace, and we include all of the people that have some stakeholder or are stakeholders in this community to make the difference. Number one, the church hasn't been destroyed. The church is still standing and is a symbol of faith and the faith-based community here within San Gabriel. It has a significant historical significance to us, and it will be repaired. Has not been destroyed, although it did have some significant damage. The purpose of having the decoy vehicle there is not simply to protect a statue. What the purpose is to make sure that we have a full complement of law enforcement tools at our disposal to try to prevent crime. And that is what our main goal is to prevent the crime. Sometimes that requires those types of methods. Other times we have to address it with some more significant means, but sometimes it's technology that we have to use. So there are different ways that we address it. Not all of them I'm willing to discuss to give out our secrets. However, I just want to let you know that we use a myriad of different techniques and tactics to get that job done.
We intend to replace that sign with a more compliant sign in August. So late August, you should see that new sign out there. And we will be replacing missing reflectors across from the high school. We will be adding reflectors in the little island at Main and Montecito. So we've just assembled some of our key performance indexes for Q4, which is the period of April through June of 2020. And in that 3-month period, we've constructed 60 ADA ramps, Americans with Disability ramps. Those are the concrete ramps at intersection corners for sidewalks. So 60, I think, is a great number. It's because we had projects in that phase of construction during this quarter. Also in the 3 months, we've issued 57 public works permits, which is good news. It's indicative that construction activity is still occurring. Despite the pandemic and the slowdown of our economy, things are still happening in San Gabriel and we're still operating. We've also recently completed what's known as Great Streets Phase 2, which fully reconstructed 3.2 lane miles of streets, and they are the worst conditioned streets in our city, those with a pavement index 20 and below. So that's very significant progress. We've replaced lights at Smith Park, at the tennis courts and the basketball courts this month, and so they're much more efficient LED lights. We put in about half the fixtures that they used to have, and the light's actually brighter. So we will see energy savings, and we're estimating those lights pay for themselves in about 2 years' time, and forever will save energy, and the lighting is brighter and better than it used to be. We also are planning on projects where in the next few months, and probably starting in August, we will be remodeling the Smith Park restroom, and then I'm hoping to move down to Lugo Park and remodel those restrooms as well. Ideally, we're trying to time projects with the shutdown of some of our programs where there is less activity going on in our parks. It's a good time to do some of these projects. We've also received a lot of money from the cancellation of the 710 freeway, and Metro has awarded San Gabriel several projects. 2 of those are moving forward fairly quickly with council approval just last week to proceed with one project that awards $700,000 to upgrade a lot of our traffic signal equipment, and the other project awarded over $3 million to connect a lot of our signals with fiber connectivity and make them a little more automated and synchronized so that traffic flows better throughout the city. The last thing I want to go over a little bit is we've been putting in some recent effort into our GIS mapping applications and using it more, and we're seeing really wonderful efficiencies in our operations and tracking of our infrastructure by using it. So if we can look at the screen for a moment, this is our GIS map. You can link to this by going to our city website and going to Public Works. You can get to this at your own home and play with it yourself. But on the left is a whole bunch of menus. You get here by clicking on this little stack of squares, and that's our layers. And you can go through here and turn layers on and off and get all kinds of information. What we've recently added as new layers is we've just done a survey of all our stormwater manholes and our stormwater mains, so you can kind of see lines and dots as our stormwater system. We do have layers for our arterial streets. You can see where the major streets are, and generally that fiber connectivity project that Metro awarded $3 million for does Valley and San Gabriel, and we've worded the application where if there's sufficient funds to do more, we hope to add Del Mar and Las Tunas and even possibly some of Ramona using that funds. I don't know how far we'll stretch those dollars yet. Design hasn't started. We do have, this is a very exciting thing, where we're planning in-house our next street resurfacing project, and this is all these colored lines are where we intend to do some work pending how much money and how the bids come in and what we can afford to do. But we're changing our strategy on our streets. We all are very aware that our streets are not envious. We have a lot of poor conditioned streets. And the reason we do is decades of underfunding to keep up with the degradation of our streets. And historically, we have gone after our worst streets. We dump a lot of money fixing our worst streets, and it just doesn't go very far. So this project represents a new thinking where we're going to spend half of our money, roughly, on our worst streets and continue to address them, but we're going to spend the other half of that money protecting and preserving our moderate streets before they degrade to becoming our worst streets where we can no longer afford to fix them. So this is our moderate project, and you can see we have a lot of lines covered. This roughly represents 12 miles of street resurfacing projects. They are not our worst streets. They're preserving our moderate streets before becoming our worst streets. I feel that this is the only way we'll ever get control over our street condition in our city, because we did a survey only a year or two ago that estimated we needed to spend about $5.4 million every year for 10 years just to improve our street index to a level that's where they're all in decent condition. We don't have that. We have about well, we're approaching 3 million, but historically, for most of the past 2 decades, we've been spending about 1 million, about 20% of what we actually needed to spend. So this new strategy is doing roughly 12 miles, which is about 1/6 of all the streets in our city. And if you consider 1/3 of our streets are in good condition and 1/3 are in moderate condition, 1/3 are in poor condition, this covers about half our moderate condition and stops them from degrading. It'll add a lot of years of life, up to about 15 years, before they become poor condition. That gives us time in the coming years to catch up with our terrible streets, the ones in the worst condition. So this is a very exciting change for us. We do have a pavement condition layer, so you can at home click on whatever street you live or work at, and you can click on these streets and it gives you the score. Red is the worst streets, so this is a score of 10 on this particular street. So you can go to any street and get its pavement index rating. And this data is what we based this project on. So we picked the streets in moderate condition with those pavement condition indexes and decided which ones are appropriate for the processes we can do to much more affordably preserve them and make them last longer. So I'm not going to go through all these layers because it will take quite a while. One layer that hasn't been migrated to this map that we just built in the last 6 weeks is our street signs. We did have one employee walk the city, and it's interesting in the world of public works, where he inspected every sign in the city, and there's actually thousands of them. And so he goes out there with his city phone, he goes to the sign and hits a button that drops a pin on this map in real time, and then he backs up, takes a picture of that sign, and it tags it, so we can go to the sign layer. He can do a pop-down menu, select what type of sign it is. It could be speed limit or no parking, and then he can pick a field of the condition, good, fair, and poor. That is all in real time. We can watch where he is in the field and dots show up and all the data happens. But then in our maintenance program, our facilities manager can go to that map and just filter the entire city and say, show me all the no parking signs in poor condition. And it does. It pops up a layer, just those dots. It says, hey, there's 42 of them. He can then place an order for 42 signs. When the order comes in, we get the signs, we hand it to staff and say, go out there, and they have on their phone all the locations of the poor condition signs. I'm pretty convinced that no city probably in the country has a more efficient system than we do right now for our sign maintenance. So I think it's something to be proud about. So that's a little bit of updating on where we're at in Public Works. So thank you for the opportunity to pitch Public Works. I love doing it because I think San Gabriel has an awesome Public Works department. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the members of the community who sent in the questions. If we have to do this virtually again, we'll go through the exact same process. I encourage people out there, we can make this as long or short as you like. So feel free to, the next time to add additional questions. We want more people in the community to participate. And for those who did participate, again, thank you very much. If there's follow-up questions you have, feel free to email us and I'll respond to you directly. With that, I want to say thank you for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday, or the first Wednesday of next month, for the next installment of Virtual 411. Have a good day.